So, round of applause to Dave.
Thank you. So I'm Dan Lester, and I'm going to be talking about my journey so far creating really a small commercial plugin business. I'll talk a bit about a bit more about me to start with, just to tell you, how I got to this point and why I decided I should build a WordPress plugin, and then I'll come back and just map out a bit more about the talk itself, and I'll run through how I came up with the idea all the way through to sort of how to get it out there. And the apology note there is just, as has been said, I did cut all this together at the last minute, so if it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about, that's the excuse we're going with. So yeah, a bit about my background then. I mean, I've always been a developer. I had a few jobs, doing infrastructure for banks in the city, that kind of stuff. I've used WordPress as a user over the last 10 years, but I hadn't really got into the development side of it. And in 2008, I started a company called iPlatform. So I wanted to get out of working in the city and start my own business, and got together with someone else, and we started this company, which became really a Facebook development agency. And that was sold in 2012 to a larger competitor. And before that, though, we decided really we wanted to build more of a product-based business, and Conversation is something that we built within iPlatform, and it's still growing. In fact, their office is just across the corridor from the bakery, so if you're wondering where that name comes from, that's where you saw it earlier. So Conversation, though, we actually span out of iPlatform, took some VC funding, and it's still growing strong. But last year I decided, growing a company was a very interesting experience. We've got into sort of 50 odd people, still going strong, but I just moved so far away from development, which is where my heart lay, I decided. So I took a sabbatical, went to Barbados with my wife for 6 months. The idea was draw a line under London for a bit, get away from all the activity here, pressure to make money and spend it, and really, we wanted to build something a lot smaller, a product-based business, ideally, and certainly something that didn't need funding, could become profitable a bit quicker. So, back to the sort of core of this talk then. So I want to talk through, first of all, why I thought it might be interesting to build a WordPress plugin, how I went about finding a problem to solve, planning how to build that, a bit of research, and then actually how I went about building it. We'll talk about the WordPress repository, which I think is an important part of this business model, really. And then go on to talk about how we also have a premium version, how we actually monetize this, and then just a few notes on how we might promote it further and develop it a bit more. So why WordPress plugins? I think it comes down to the sort of business model that you feel comfortable with, really. There's a lot of literature out there about how to start a bootstrap business, and ideally people say, you have a software as a service business, charging a sort of more predictable amount of revenue every month, and that's certainly very nice once you get there, but it can really take a couple of years to be able to build that kind of business where it can be a full-time job. A lot of people say, well, if you want to launch a new venture, start with just a book, some course or something. Then the idea being really, what you need to get your head around, especially if you're a developer, is the marketing side of things, how you're going to spread the word out about what you've built. And I think, I felt that a WordPress plugin would be somewhere between these two types of business, really. I wanted something that was a one-time digital download, quick to put together. A WordPress plugin doesn't need a lot of infrastructure around the to deliver that user experience. It's not a live thing that you have to keep up in the middle of the night. It's not a hosted thing. And I think what was very important was that there's an existing marketplace in the WordPress plugin repository. And I think that's helpful. Certainly, it's a first venture as a sort of, it's first venture as a bootstrap business. That it's just somewhere to sort of hook into the sort of stuff going on there, and that can help a lot. And as I say, it's a low commitment. It's building a piece of code. You can make something useful in one PHP file, and worst case, you end up putting it out for free because you couldn't find a way to monetize it. So to find the problem that we ended up solving, so it came really from Conversational, the previous business that I was running. And the problem was that we set up a couple of WordPress blogs as intranets, really. Say design intranets where developers would talk about what they were proposing, and then salespeople could comment on it. And the problem was always that no one could remember how to log in, basically. Well, even before that, if they wanted access to it, they had to ask the developer who'd set the thing up and get a link through. By the time they'd forgotten their username and password, it was too embarrassing to ask for a new one. They had to admit they hadn't been following the blog for a year. So yeah, ultimately it was something that I had experience of. It was close to home. Certainly we recommend having access to someone with the problem that you want to solve. It had a clear solution for us. We were all on Google Apps, so for clearly a tighter integration between Google Apps and WordPress would just mean that if those users could basically sync across and have a single sign-on, then that would solve that problem. And yeah, in terms of web research that I did, I think the most important part really was just to try and prove that people were trying to solve this problem one way or another, or had this problem really. And the most important page I found really, when Googling for WordPress, Google Apps, login, intranet, and that kind of stuff, there was a blog page someone written about how to hack together some other plugins to do it, and that got a lot of comments, and obviously it was something that people were trying to solve. So I thought, oh, that's what's going ahead. So in terms of planning the solution then, I think it's very important to understand the marketplace, look at similar plugins, so in this case around third-party authentication, to understand what people will expect in terms of how it should look. And then, I think just to get something out there, you need to think about what is the simplest solution that you can make, first of all, that people will pay for. So in this example, I think what was important was the single sign-on element, so that people could click to log in with Google using their Google account, and also their accounts needed to, in some way, already exist in WordPress, just to make sure that you could basically forget about, as the admin, forget about the user management on WordPress. But then I think what's important, if you think about how I wanted to approach this, which was, I knew I wanted to hook into the WordPress repository, which is only for free plugins. We really had to have a way to break up this freemium split, as I call it. What's the free version going to do? It needs to be a cut down version of the paid plugin. So the free plugin will just do the single sign-on bit for existing users. So basically what we're doing is adding a login with Google button onto the standard WordPress login page. So in terms of building the plugin, so I already knew a bit of PHP, but plenty of tutorials on the web for how to build a WordPress plugin. I think, looking at how other plugins work is obviously very important. I think you also need to make sure, as a developer, you've got some working versions of, maybe different versions of WordPress on your development machine, that they should all be set up to do error logging and all that kind of stuff, so you can see what's going on with these sites. You can knock about a bit, and I just did a soft symlink to the development directory of the plugin I was building. And I think also, if you're building a WordPress plugin, you can't really be afraid to look at the WordPress code. You need to be comfortable stepping through it at some stage and understand really what hooks and filters that's trying to call and how your plugin can interface with that. So the codex is WordPress's API documentation, so that's worth a look. Just to note there, in terms of PHP 5.2, I think it's important to target that still, because I think around half of WordPress installations are still running on that. The thing there is, if you could use 5.3, I think you get some namespaces in there, which would allow you to segregate your plugin from many other plugins out there. So with 5.2, you do get a lot of conflicts. So it's important to put, a little prefix in front of any class names or even CSS selectors to make sure that you're not going to conflict. And sure, I set up Git for hosting and using Eclipse as a text editor, and I say that because I don't call it an IDE there. I'm not using it like that, or because I just find just debugging when you've got WordPress and and your own plugin going on it is actually just too hard. I've never really managed to do much more than error logs at this stage. An important component then of this whole business model is the WordPress repository. This is where you can search for these free plugins and automatically download them straight away onto your WordPress installation. But the way that WordPress builds this, they talk about it really being free SVN hosting on reserve battery power. So the point there is, that they, first of all, require your plugins to be free, and sort of even worse than that, they need to be GPL. They need to actually be donated to the public domain. So one thing you need to really think about there ahead of time is, are you prepared to do that? If you're using other libraries, so I was using the Google client library, you need to see what license that has and make sure that the license you give to your plugin is compatible. But of course, what's important to understand is that you shouldn't put any of your sort of premium code that you want ultimately to be able to charge for on there, because you're putting it on there is ultimately giving it away. Another important thing to research on if you're building a plugin for hosting on the WordPress repository is the readme txt file. Really that is it's a markdown document that allows you to specify all the stuff that appears on this page. You put down the description and make a nice image at the top, which I think is important. It doesn't have to be too fancy, but just if you are trying to make a fully supported commercial plugin, it sets it apart. You take a bit of time to do that kind of stuff compared to the plugins that are just using it for hosting. You can also specify in the readme file, what sort of version of WordPress you're supporting, what you've tested it up to. And I think there's no need to go too far back, in my opinion. I've chosen 3.3, which is where most of the sort of hooks I happen to be using were introduced. And I think, I said before, 3.0, I think you'd have to have a good reason to want to support that. Another important thing to note here then is, read through the rules that WordPress have if you want to do this yourself, but they're quite strict about what level you can monetize a plugin. So you can sort of advertise certain support and premium features, but ultimately they've got to be on your own site somewhere. And it's just important to monitor this page. There's a support tab which just gives a forum what you do need to say is how you'll support it. You know, as I've said, I'd rather people email me. You know, if you're doing a free plugin, you can say, I don't want to support it. You will always find people do put stuff on the support tab, whatever you say, and I think, you know, it's certainly important to monitor that, get an RSS feed. But I mean, I tend to try and move people onto email as quick as I can. But you know, when people are searching for plugins to install, it will say if you know, it will say 4 out of 5 support threads have been resolved in the last month or something like that. So if it says 0 because you've been ignoring it, then you know that's not really a way to build up the reputation, of course. Okay, so I guess I've shown how we released that free version, which was just a single sign-on component. And then the next stage was to work out how to build the premium sort of extension to that. So yeah, I just went around, built a new branch in Git to start with. It's a slightly more complicated hierarchy now, but that's all we did to start with. Make a website called wpglogin.com. You know, it wasn't too important what it was called. I was expecting all the traffic to come through WordPress.org really anyway. Thought a bit about pricing. You know, it wasn't really matter to start with, but we went with licenses based on the size of your Google Apps domain. I think as a reasonable standard at the moment is to say you'll include a year of support and updates. So we just had a sales page up there, and we linked to a site called Gumroad, which takes care of the payment side and the digital delivery, you know, just of a zip file. And I mean, a lot of people have good experiences with Gumroad, but we cannot recommend it at all. Actually, the site didn't work well at that time, and we had real problems with their customer support. And you know, they suspended our account without even saying, and eventually we discovered that, and they were very slow to help with it. So we went in the end with Easy Digital Downloads, which is a free plugin, certainly very popular, and for free you can get just a PayPal integration that will take care of all of that. And we also added Stripe, so to do that, you know, that's a premium upgrade. You need to get an SSL certificate, but you just then get a nice checkout on your own website. Set up a Twitter account and mailing list, you know, started doing a few of those marketing type things. Made a t-shirt, you're not going to get very far down there. And I guess the most important thing really is linking this back into what we already built, the free version. So when I talk about upgrade notices in README, yeah, I just mean adding onto the description page, you know, explaining what the premium version can do and about the support. And on the settings page as well, including the plugin, just to explain what's available. That is a sales page, nothing too fancy. So, yeah, just want to talk a little bit then, you know, about further promotion that we did and sort of how we came about that. Yeah, it's important to track everything you're doing. Use the UTM links for Google Analytics on the site. The thing is, of course, most traffic comes through WordPress.org, and you know that's the most important thing to remember, really, that your real sales page is to start with, at least on that WordPress repository. But we also built another plugin called Google Drive Embedder, and the idea there was this was to do with embedding documents on your Google documents on your site, and it was really designed as a sort of a loss leader almost, because it was an extension of the login plugin. So you'd have to configure the login plugin, but once you've done that, it sort of has its own platform that it exposes, and we sort of built on that. So that basically gave us a separate page in the WordPress repository, and as I said, that was for free because ultimately the intention was to drive installs of the core login plugin. So that, yeah, we saw installations of the login plugin went up accordingly. So that was nice, but you know, jury's still out really on whether that was relevant traffic or whether people just really wanted the document embedder functionality. So we do now also have a premium version of the driver embedder, because I thought, well, you know, it might as well pay for itself if it wasn't that clear what it was driving. But I think, you know, at that stage we'd almost put too much functionality into the free version, so that's when we plug a freemium split thing, which we perhaps didn't get right for that in the end. A nice little thing that we did was the users page promo. So what I mean by that is, on the free version of the Google Apps login plugin, we had, you just put a notice on the add users page in WordPress. So if, you know, a WordPress admin was going to go to the site to add a user, that was a point where it made sense for us to say, you don't need to do this. You know, if everyone's on Google Apps, you can buy a premium version and it will take care of the user management, you know, with a purchase or a no thanks button. And that drove some traffic, you know, not a huge amount, but you know, with very high conversion really. That was obviously at a point where people recognised that problem and wanted to solve it. So in terms of further promotion that we did, a bit more work on our own blog, you know, work with some customers on case studies and put some logos up, you know, to give a bit of validation that other people are using this product. Yeah, we noticed that most of our customers were using the plugin with intranets. So we thought, well, let's write a blog series on, you know, how to use WordPress to set up to set up the intranet, you know, how to make it private, and talk through all the choices there. So that's been good for, you know, SEO. So if you type intranet WordPress multi-site or whatever, it comes up relatively high, and I think drives some relevant traffic. And yeah, another thing we did was put the instructions on our own site. What I mean here is, well, when you set up this free plugin, it used to have a description of how you had to go to Google Console to register an application, and then you have to put key and secret into the plugin. And that just used to be on the one settings page. But we changed that so that instead it would say, click here to open your personalised instructions, and that would feed through to our website and show the instructions there, which meant we had a bit more control over it, to put images and so on. But I think it's most importantly, it then brought more users to our site. You know, then they can sign up for a mailing list and find out a bit more about what else we can offer. So yeah, with WordPress.org then, you know, as I've said, it's important to understand that really is how you got the foot in the door. And you know, after releasing the plugin sort of overnight, you get you know, a boost on Google basically for you know, for your relevant search terms, because your plugin hosted on WordPress.org, which is a high page rank site. So if you're typing Google Apps login WordPress, it overnight got you there really. So there's a bit of optimization I've done on that page. You know, if you look at our description, it says a lot of things like, you know, works with Google Apps for enterprise, Google Apps for non-profit, Google Apps for education, which is really just there just to add a bit more SEO content. So tags were important as well. You know, you can specify in your README file, you know, a few things like intranet, single sign-on, and those sort of category pages. Then we've all this, you know, relevant plugins or related plugins. So I think it's important to see what, you know, what your competitors or similar plugins are tagging themselves as. You know, so for example, I think I did a Google search at one point for WordPress SSO or something like that for single sign-on. And you know, saw it came up highly with the category page for SSO and listed a bunch of plugins, not ours. So went to our README, added SSO, and you know, automatically then get pulled into a, you know, a relatively high ranking page for whatever term we were looking at. Then just to close on further development, what we've thought about doing, what we've done. I thought for a while about turning this into an online service that would you know, be hosted and sit in the background syncing up Google Apps users into your WordPress site, and then you know, you can charge on a subscription basis, which might have been nice at the high end, but at the end of the day, most of our customers were happy with the solution we had. There weren't any real problems, and decided in the end I was trying to sort of complicate things for my own purposes really when it wasn't in our customers' interest. But we do have an enterprise version, and that gives a lot more granular control on user roles in WordPress. So you can set membership of groups. So if a user's a member of developers at yourcompany.com, then you might want them all to be admins of your WordPress site, and everyone else should be a subscriber, say. But we also have, it does more involved logging and things like that. But I guess the point is, it's a self-selecting price mechanism as well. People want to be part of enterprise, want to pay for it. We also did avatars, putting in Google profiles, profile pictures into WordPress instead of Gravatar. So that was a nice little plugin again with some, except the $9 extension, but it just has some nice little hooks into your WordPress profiles that the login plugin gives you. So users can say, they can all see how they can get their Google profile pulled in. It's their administrator to buy that. And the latest thing we're looking at is, an all-in-one intranet plugin. So this came from the blog series I was talking about. We had a guide for different free plugins that you might need to set up an intranet. So we offer a sort of fully supported all-in-one solution for that. I think that's it. Thank you. Do you want to any questions? If anyone has any?
Is it a big hassle to deal with all the support?
It's a good question. So it hasn't been too bad, and I think it hasn't been too bad at all actually, and I found the kind of people we've got involved with to be pretty helpful, to the point, and in terms of the revenue it brings in compared to the time it takes, that's sort of fine, in the sense that it's not like it's not I'm not drowning in it by any means. But I think that probably does depend on the market you happen to hit on. We do hear of a lot of people having trouble. I think with this, it's generally an IT manager that wants to buy these kind of plugins and set it up. So possibly they have a bit more knowledge to start with.
The most important question: has it made you a billionaire?
I'm
more
not
specifically, is it a viable business or support yourself?
No, it's a good question. At this stage, not on its own entirely, but as I was saying, compared to the amount of work it could be, it's fine. And I guess the point is, with a few more of those at that level, or if we could do it more, just to boost that revenue, then it certainly could be. And I think we're at that stage where actually sort of maxed out the organic traffic we're getting, and the next stage would be either to, if we believe it, go a bit further, do more advertising, that kind of stuff, and to grow that, but not a billionaire yet. Well, I think no, in the sense that they did do some interesting stuff a few months ago on WordPress, mainly to do with AdWords and publishing, but I don't think they're really into it. They don't think there's too much activity. At the end of the day, of course, they could replicate this and get far more traffic, which is a possibility, but it's not something that they're likely to be too worried about. It's obviously quite a niche thing. These companies that are building intranets on WordPress happen to all have Google Apps. It's fairly specific, I think.
You said you moved about a bit with the free and the premium. What sort of split were you able to tweak it so you could get more on the premium percentage compared to free down?
So in terms of the sort of core login plugin that we built, I mean, we never sort of brought any functionality sort of back into the free one or changed it about, but over time we started to develop more features, you know, for the premium version. But you know, the sort of upgrade rate, I mean, it's not that high, probably. I think it's between 1% and 4% or something like that in terms of free downloads to people actually buying something. But I talked a bit about the drive embedder, which was all sort of supposed to be a sort of loss leader in the first place, and that's one where, you know, possibly we'd known the ultimate strategy that there might be a premium upgrade. We would have got to put a bit less into the free version to start with. Anyone else?
Okay, 1 year support and updates. How do you deal with people who are over this period? Renewal of
And
subscriptions?
renewal of the premium subscriptions.
Yeah.
So we offer, as I say, a year of support and automatic updates, and actually there's an extension on the easy digital downloads that has license keys, and so a client can.
To me, it's a plugin on its own, and I thought if you had to program this yourself, it would be as much as
No, sure.
what you did.
I mean, and to start with, we didn't have any automatic upgrade. You know, we had a relatively small number of customers and sent important updates out over email, and then every time.
You
Changed it.
stop them from accessing the plugin or
So there's no real way to actually sort of make the plugin stop after a year, and you know, the license that we have sets you allowed to use it indefinitely, but you just won't get any updates. But it will stop. Your license key will stop working for updates after a year if you don't renew it.
You can use APIs, like WordPress can use cranked out jobs. You can do one per week. So it is a key, and you can provide the key from your domain. So if the key is not available anymore using gashes or something like that, you can disable the plugin or can auto-destroy it. Or something like that.
we leave them to it. I mean, I think it's an important point. At some level, you've got, and when you sell this plugin, as I say, the license is based on number of Google Apps users you have, which ultimately relies on your honesty at that stage, which may come out in a support call if you're not careful, you know. But at some level, you've just got to not worry about it, to be honest, you know, and hope that you can out-innovate a bit and it ultimately provides some valuable support as well, or even, you know, just the confidence that they're you know, dealing with a plugin they can trust, really.
You don't work with Italians. Because you don't work with Italians. Really.